So I've eaten a plant-based diet for over 10 years now. In fact, next month we are 11 years living this way. And so today I want to share with you the rules that I still swear by and religiously follow to this day. This is exactly what I would tell young Rye if he was getting started munching on the old plants back in the day. All of this is going to make it easier to be a leaner, fitter, healthier, and more consistent, realistic plant-based dieter. Let's get into it. Number one, batch-friendly one-pot meals are the cheat code. People hate meal prep. I hate meal prep, to be honest. I hate putting stuff in Tupperware containers on a Sunday afternoon for the next 3 days, and then by the time you eat your overnight oats on Wednesday morning, they taste minging. Can't stand it. But what I do believe in is batch cooking. If you're going to make a meal, why not make 2, 3, 4 servings of it anyway, and dinner it's absolutely perfect for this. And what's better than just throwing everything into a pot after you've had a long hard day? So this is where I love the chilies, I love the big hearty loaded soups, I love my stir fry. Technically I do the rice separately, but a lot of this stuff, it involves minimal cooking and you throw everything in together so you don't have to sit there watching over it, turning and stirring the food constantly in the kitchen. Just easy, easy, easy. A lot of people obsessed with the cookbooks and the recipes and they want to do all the elaborate stuff. You can do that once in a while, but honestly, most of your meals should be these very batch-friendly 1 or 2 pan type meals. Number 2, in a similar vein, fewer meals equals less planning. I have always been a repetitive eater, to be honest, so when I first started with this lifestyle, I never made it too complicated for myself, and I think that also was a superpower. That was a cheat code at the start, because I just didn't make it overwhelming, thinking that I needed to walk into the grocery store with this long list of ingredients. Just gave myself permission to keep it simple. I've always been quite repetitive with virtually all of my habits, to be honest. I'm a pretty minimalist person, but honestly, I noticed that this lifestyle is so much easier. It's easier to get in amazing shape on this lifestyle when I just eat, as boring as it sounds, the same foods and the same meals daily for maximum control. There's less distraction. Like, I don't really need to count the calories because I just eat the same foods every day. I know I'm hitting my protein, carbs, fat to adequate levels. I know my micronutrients, the vitamins and minerals, fiber, I'm getting 50, 60 grams a day just automatically because I've tracked it before and I know roughly that I eat the same meals. It's just so easy. Stop overcomplicating. Number 3 is going to sound like a funny one. Make sure you're eating enough. My channel is all about getting lean, slim, healthy, fit with this incredible lifestyle. I've already talked about it so far, so you would think, well, surely the less food, the better, right? Not necessarily, because when you eat these whole plant foods, so many of them have such a low calorie density depending on the lifestyle, relative probably to the likely lifestyle that your way of eating that you're coming from. If you're coming from a standard Western diet, if you're coming from a really unhealthy, omnivorous, very sort of junk food centered in particular diet, then yeah, the composition of your meals now are going to have a considerably lower, as long as you're consistent, calorie density. Your calories are going to drop significantly. Again, you might be thinking, win-win, fantastic, that's going to be great for the scale, Ryan. What are you talking about, mate? Yeah, but if you're in such a steep, aggressive calorie deficit, even if you're not tracking your calories, it is possible to be in a really extreme calorie deficit. You're going to be hungry, you're going to be starving, there's only so long you're going to white knuckle it, you're going to be dealing with all kinds of cravings, and this is what I see a lot with ex-vegans that kind of go back to other patterns. I'm not judging other ways of eating. One trend I notice a lot is they all report, I was really hungry and I was doing the vegan plant-based thing. And then when they talk about their daily diet, you're like, yeah, you were doing like the raw thing, or you were just eating salads, or you're just eating like loads of fruit. Doesn't really necessarily have the calorie density there to keep you fueled, energized, thriving on this lifestyle, so make sure you're eating enough. Number 4. Uno reverse here, kind of the same thing, but going the other way this time. Understand that calories and portions still count, and just because it's a whole plant food, what I've just said in number 3 is not a free pass to just eat as much as you want because, well, I'm doing the plant-based thing, it's healthy, Ryan said it's low calorie density stuff. No, that's not a green light for unlimited portions. I think a lot of people falsely assume they're going to come to plant-based eating and the weight will just automatically fly off them. Many people do report this in the opening months, ironically, but it's just not a guarantee, is my only meaning. And again, just because it's healthy, that doesn't mean that you're not in a calorie surplus, that you're not going to gain weight. Don't be shocked if you are just eating as much as you want and it's a free-for-all and you never consider calorie density and you go up the scale after switching to plant-based. Never be shocked by that. Yeah, the calories and the portions still count, even though this lifestyle can offer you quite generous portions per calorie, which is the point I just made. Again, doesn't mean it's guaranteed weight loss. Number 5 is one that I've basically done since day 1 with this lifestyle. I eat 2 servings of beans, lentils, so legumes by extension, so peas, split peas, etc., etc., and tofu I count in this category as well. It's a bean derivative, isn't it, technically, excuse me, from soybean. I eat these twice daily and have done, as I say, for almost 11 years now, and I feel incredible with it. And yeah, I feel incredible, so do I attribute that only to eating legumes? No, of course not. It's really hard to kind of extrapolate what has been so successful for me in recent years. But at the same time, I think the fullness, the satisfaction, knowing what I know about the nutrition content of these foods as well. Look, I don't think there's any mandatory food you must eat on a plant-based diet, and if there's a food you don't particularly like, or you are sensitive or allergic to, that's fine, you can work around it. There's no mandatory food, there's no superfood, in other words, that you must eat and you will die, be deficient without, of course. But there is something about the legume category especially, where for me they are a bit of a deal breaker, and I'm like, rarely a day goes by where I don't have 2 servings of legumes, and I'm just so big on it, and it just adds so much fullness, satiety, nutrition to my daily diet. Number 6 is one that I've shifted slightly on over the years. Where I've landed now is I am a 90% whole foods policy person. I leave this 10% of wiggle room for not only the occasional meal out or cocktail or a little bit of a fun thing, just to be really realistic and honest and transparent with you, but also I'm including in this category still processed foods that I actually consider healthy. So this is where we have things like the whole wheat, the rye, the sourdough breads, minimal ingredients, decent quality bread, healthy cereals like my bran flakes, shredded wheat, Weetabix-esque. I'm not saying necessarily those particular brands, but shredded wheat. Some of them have the sheep's wool, vitamin D, etc., etc. But I mean those kinds of higher fiber, typically lower caloric density cereals. I still eat these things. Nice pasta, chickpea, whole wheat, red lentil pasta I enjoy. Trying to think what else. Oh, the yogurts, like plant yogurts. I love my yogurt bowls, don't I? And the plant milks, of course, that I throw into my cereal, onto my oats, etc., etc. So yeah, I still have these stevia, technically, it's kind of actually, stevia is processed, but it's actually natural. It's from a natural source. But I digress anyway. I still eat processed foods. What about supplements, right? Technically, and we're going to come on to those as a separate rule, but they're technically processed as well. So this is why I'm not like a total whole foods puritan, but I do want the bulk of my daily consumption to be coming from real, quote unquote, whole foods. Just because something is processed doesn't mean it's automatically bad, is what I would say. Rule number 7 for me, this predates plant-based eating. There is one healthy food group that I have always loved unwaveringly, unfailingly since I was a little sprog. I love fruit, is what I'm meaning to say. And the sugar in fruit is what I want to particularly speak about. The sugar in fruit is fine, and that's rule number 7, and that's a massive distinction from the added refined sugars thrown into many junk foods and sodas. You know, please understand the nuance there. This is ludicrous, this kind of very binary thinking around sugar. Just the word sugar is this massive trigger for people. I also think a lot of people, if I'm being really skeptical, scathing, a lot of people misdiagnose the food addictions they have, the cause of their weight gain over the years as a sugar problem. They're really just talking about they eat lots of junk foods and too many calories, not necessarily the sugar, the refined sugar component being one part of it, but they're really meaning, look, my diet is really, really poor, and so of course I'm going up the scale. A lot of people falsely diagnose this as sugar addiction. It's like, what, are you addicted to bananas then? I just don't buy it. I just don't believe that it's a sugar addiction in isolation necessarily. Number 8, eat carbs and fat, not one or the other. This tribal thing, the keto people are like, no, the fat is, the carbs are the problem. And then at the other end of the spectrum in my community, you kind of got the high carb corner that says, no, the fat you eat is the fat you wear, and they're blaming the fat. And like, they're just different macronutrients like protein. They do different things. They perform different functions in the body, all of them useful, all of them can somewhat mask or aid in the functions of the other macronutrient if it isn't present in large amounts, but not to a particularly, because this is where people say, the keto guys will say, well, fat can still be a good energy source, and they're not wrong, but they kind of somewhat directionally are. And so just have them all, for goodness sakes. And I think, again, this is maybe a weight loss paradigm question versus a general plant-based nutrition question, but a lot of people, when they want to lose weight with the diets and stuff, they are picking between fat fat and carbohydrates as the mechanism to bring down calories. But really, if you just keep your calories in the appropriate place, even if you don't want to lose weight, if you're maintaining right now, if you keep your calories in the appropriate place for your goal, and that's actually working, doesn't really matter. The macronutrients are secondary. Carbs, protein, and fat, they are usurped by the importance of calories. In other words, what am I saying? What am I inferring here? You can eat both. Eat carbs and fats. They both bring different things to the party. It's like having two friends, two best friends. They are different personalities. They help you with different things in your life. You do different things with each of them. Are you going to say no to only one of you guys can come to my wedding? Bit harsh. Number 9, yes, more specifically, the fats are calorie dense. It's true. So when the high carbers say the fat you eat is the fat you wear, it really should be avoided. I understand why they're saying this, because the caloric nature of fat versus carbohydrates and protein, it has over double, I should say rather, calories per gram as the aforementioned macronutrients, but I think it's still worth fitting in properly. And again, we have to talk about the omega-3s, because they are, let's be honest, nutrition gaps are possible with any nutrition approach. The omega-3s is a tiny weak point with this way of eating, and so make sure you're eating the hemp seeds, the flax, the chia, the walnuts, Brussels sprouts, surprisingly high in omega-3s, and ensuring that you're getting those omega-3s. But more generally, the fat category, the fats do really important things in the body for the blood, the hair, the nails, etc., etc. Hormonally, they play a really important role. Not to mention, from a healthy whole food source, they're bloody satisfying, they're bloody enjoyable. Nothing better than an avocado on my bowls to just bring it to life. Just really enjoy. Again, if you're not enjoying your meals, you're not going to stay sustainable with any nutrition approach, are you? That bit of avocado, it goes a long way for me. Number 10, of course, exercise helps. And I think a lot of people in the plant-based space are so nutrition set. I see this with my peers, actually, other teachers and nutritionists and coaches and MDs even in this space, whom I respect greatly, but they never talk about exercise. And I think that's a real flaw, because physical activity is a really important part of the health equation alongside nutrition too. But let's be honest, nutrition is the biggest piece of the puzzle. I don't think that's a controversial statement. I think most people are aligned with me on this. So let's just find that right balance between not doing so much exercise that the appetite is skyrocketing, that we're justifying really unhealthy vegan processed food sneaking into the diet because, oh, my Apple Watch says I burn 600 calories in this workout. Let's not get too sidetracked with the exercise emphasis that we maybe make poorer nutrition choices simultaneously. Let's please understand that, especially from a weight management perspective, it mostly is going to come down to your calorie control in terms of intake versus calorie expenditure, because it's so hard to keep burning calorie through physical activity versus just changing how much you chew per day. Number 11, I started out by saying these were all rules that I religiously follow. You know, if I was to pick one here that I could be a little bit better with, sometimes it's this one: at least 1 cup of dark leafy greens per day. Now, sometimes I go way over, but I know I'm always eating lots of vegetables, but sometimes there are days that go by sometimes where I don't technically dark leafy greens. So, hey, look, not a perfect person, double standard, a little bit of a hypocrite as I make this video, but certainly one thing I aspire to. As a nice rule to keep in mind, a practical tip: 1 cup of those dark leafy greens daily. So kale, spinach, there are others, but mustard, greens, what else? Forgetting my favorite, rocket, arugula. Number 12, what do I do with supplementation? I supplement vitamin B12, vitamin D, ideally with K2. I do it with K2, but ideally I suggest with K2. And then, of course, an omega-3 DHA EPA supplement. And you might be thinking, hold on, you talked about omega-3 earlier, Ryan. Yeah, but just to ensure the ALE conversion, because people, this is a really good question, people always ask me, but hold on, you make this big emphasis of whole food omega-3 sources, why do you need to take a supplement too? It's to do with the ALA conversion. Really, what we need to understand with the omega-3 is it's also the balance between the omegas. It's not just maximizing omega-3, you want the right amount. Maybe that's a secondary point as well. I just don't want to make this video too convoluted, excuse me. I just want this to be beginner steps, but those are the 3 things I supplement. There's a secondary list of kind of like maybes and common and things people ought to supplement in certain scenarios, and these include likes of iron and calcium and maybe zinc. A couple of reasons as to iodine is another one. A couple of reasons as to those things, but I don't consider them as mandatory across the whole plant-based populace as those 3, B12, omega-3, and vitamin D with K2. Number 13, I'm not doing the fingers anymore, I don't have enough, contrary to the rumours. But soy is safe. Soy is safe, yes, unless you're allergic, of course, elephant in the room. If you know via a test you're allergic to soy, of course, that is an exception. But soy, wonderfully crammed with nutrients. Let's remember it's a bean. So when we talk about things like tofu, and when we talk about soy, and when people, again, point at lots of processed junk foods, and they go, soy, 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 kind of like the sugar thing, there's loads of problems with that processed junk food, and people are going, oh, but it's got soybean oil in, or it's like the corn syrup thing. It's like, corn syrup isn't good for you, I concede this, but like there's so many things in the ingredients list, and people do this thing where they pick out a certain thing. Very odd to me, like it's a bunch of rubbish that you're eating. It's a bunch of rubbish. Anyway, I digress. Calm, calm, calm. Soy, tofu, tempeh, of course, soy milks, the soy yogurts that I use. I've got no problem with this. No, I don't have a limit per day. There is always a question I get on amino acid balance, but soy has a complete profile of the essential amino acids anyway. So if you eat lots of soy, it's not as though you necessarily need to balance it out with different protein sources to get a full amino acid profile, because soy handles that for all the complete range for you anyway. Does that make sense? But I do think, as a secondary point, maybe this is a little bonus rule for you, I do like the idea with protein sources, especially just to make sure you are covered from an amino acid perspective, to have a bit of variety too. That is a good tip anyway. Number 14, healthy food should still taste good. Put the time in to make meals you actually enjoy. Of course, don't force yourself to add meals. Maybe you look at some of my stuff and you give it a go and you think, oh, what's Ryan talking about? This is no good. I don't really like the yogurt bowls. I don't really like the plant protein sludge, whatever it is. That's totally fine, totally cool. But do find stuff that you like and be willing to just do that little bit of, I talked about simplicity earlier on, but it's important that you have a little bit of variety, especially when you're getting started, to kind of tweak and play things and ultimately see what you like. Condiments are really important as well. Like just a simple condiment can change the entire taste and texture of a meal. So don't forget low calorie things. I always recommend things like salsa, things like hot sauce, things like soy sauce. Of course, I recommend a low sodium version. Trying to think what else. Balsamic vinegar, maybe a little bit of balsamic glaze. That's a bit more calorific and artificial, but just something to bring the meal to life a little bit. Drizzle, tiny drizzle of maple syrup. This is where I like the stevia as well on my oatmeal. I've got no problem with stevia. Other sweeteners, no, but stevia, fantastic. What else? Mustard. I love mustard. I'm obsessed with mustard, but just a little bit of these things can totally change your meal, bring it to life. Another hack as well, if you consider yourself a pretty amateur cook and you don't really know how to combine meals, ingredients, flavors, etc., and it's totally overwhelming to you, just using like a third or a half of a vegetable stock cube, absolute game changer. Yeah, some of them are oily, salty, avoid the ones with MSG, but just so much flavor. You're only having a small amount anyway, is what I would say in the grand total of the volume you're eating. So that's important context, but just, yeah, they bring so much flavor easily as well. And lastly, number 15, you don't need to be perfect to get leaner, to get healthier, and to stay consistent with this lifestyle. A lot of people come and they listen to the wonderful MDs in this space and they absorb things like the Daily Dozen, great resources from the wonderful Dr. Neil Barnard and organizations like PCRM that I think overall do a fantastic job at promoting this way of eating. I won't use the word Puritan because I share a lot of their ideas as well. You know, the inclusion of these healthier processed foods has been great to me in time. The breads, they've made my diet more exciting. The occasional meal out. Not being so stuck up and snobbish about whole foods policy that I can't occasionally just have a bit of fun. You know, there were 5 months about a year into going vegan where I didn't eat out, and I look back and I go, well, that's a bit excessive. That's a bit over the top. And just trying to do things that make it a little bit more realistic and being okay with, oh, I haven't necessarily checked the perfect whole plant foods, you know, textbook guidelines. You don't need to be perfect to get wonderful results. Remember what you've come from. Remember, even if it's messy, even if it's imperfect, even if there's the occasional binge, even if you wobble and go back and then get back, ultimately you got back on track, good for you. Remember, the composition of your diet is still so much better, I'm sure, than it was 1, 2, 3 years ago. And just give yourself that grace and just contextualize everything. And anytime you have a deviation and there is something in your head that's like, oh no, I broke the rules, oh my goodness, doomsday, I ate something really, really unhealthy, I've been doing so well. Every time you do that, just remember how far you've come, get back on track. And that's it, those are my 15 rules. Let me know down in the comments which of these resonate most with you and which you're going to be working on going forward if you want my help simplifying plant-based nutrition so you can drop 6 to 10 pounds per month consistently until you get to your ideal healthy weight range without it being too extreme, without dragging the calories too low that this feels brutal, and just learning how to do a sensible, sustainable, more realistic approach to plant-based that actually feels like, you know what, I could eat this way for years, for my life. This feels awesome. The link for my coaching will be down in the description below.